What's up, NBA fan? What's up, all sports fans? This your boy JB, host of the Behind the Bench Podcast Network and channel, giving a shout out to the rest of the crew: Shy, Kelvin, Jermaine, KB Film Room, Big Dog Talk Sports. That's right, that's right. Everyone who's tuning in today, thank you for supporting Behind the Bench. Subscribe to the channel. Help make this show the best that it can be. Now check this out, people. Woo, woo, woo. Man, oh man. This right here, this season right here, totally confirmed and validated those instincts, man. Logic that told me that the Lakers were being taken for a ride. I'm not saying where you enjoy the ride. I mean, you've been taken for a ride. You've been had. And I remember going into the 21-22 season, man. Well, doing that all season after the 21 campaign, when the Lakers lost in the first round, the Los Angeles Lakers lost in the first round to the Phoenix Suns in 6 games. And I'll never forget this, people. In that closeout game, in game 6, at home, when it was still known as the Staples Center, Devin Booker went off for 47 points. He dropped a 47-piece in elimination game versus the defending champion. Well, let's just say the winner of the bubble. And it looked like, man, the way he was playing, it was like the spirit of Kobe, like, gave him that extra, like, presence out there on the court, man. And going into that series, I picked Phoenix to win. This was before injuries. You know, people say Anthony Davis got hurt, and I get that, but Chris Paul got hurt too. Injured shoulder, he missed 2 games. But in that game 6, midway through the second quarter, Phoenix was beating LA. The Suns were beating the Lakers by the score of something like 45 or 47 to 18. Midway through the second quarter. So a team that's on the brink of elimination can only muster 18 points midway through the second quarter. And this had been barely mentioned, and you didn't hear any of the talking heads out there bring this to people's attention in terms of why is a so-called defending champion losing by 29 points at home only able to muster 18 points midway through the second quarter. Something's not right, man. And what it told me is that young core was missed. Because essentially it was really only technically one true young core member that remained on that roster, and that was Kyle Kuzma. Then you had Taylor Horton Tucker, but I really don't include him in that wave of young talent that we were drafting from 2014 and 2018. I said, yup, they missing a true center. Yup, they missing a true point guard. Yup, they missing a true wing. Yup, they missing a true second unit. I was just checking the boxes off in the midst of, of the beatdown. And then Phoenix let up on the gas, and the score looked better than really what was taking place out there. The Lakers had no talent. So doing that all season, led by the Hurricane, the organization, the franchise had to resort on all veteran players because there were no young stars available in free agency because that was the off season where you would begin to see organizations re-sign a talent, their young stars, to 4 or 5 year extensions. So I'm like, okay, yeah. So this reliance on superstar free agents, we can throw that out the window too. And they really couldn't make any significant trades, right? Especially after uh, the, going into the 2021 campaign. Remember, they traded Danny Green and a first round pick to acquire Dennis Schroeder, who was on that team that year. And then after one season, he was gone. So I'm like, okay, yeah, we gave up a draft pick, a first round pick, which that draft pick could have put us in position to draft Jaden McDaniel, who played for the Minnesota Timberwolves now, and he was one of the contributing factors as to why the Timberwolves beat the Lakers this postseason in the first round. So the Hurricane and franchise had to resort to signing all veteran players. When I mean veteran players, I'm talking about the oldest players in the league. So you bring in a Carmelo Anthony, you bring in a Dwight Howard, you bring back a Dwight Howard, you bring back a Rajon Rondo. Now remember, after the bubble, they let Rondo go. Remember that? They let him go to open up a roster spot to bring in Dennis Schroeder to upgrade the position because they knew that team in the bubble wasn't gonna hold up. They knew that. That team was already the oldest squad in the league. That won the bubble. They knew that team wasn't gonna hold up. So when a lot of Laker fans out there say, why didn't they keep that team intact? That team wasn't gonna hold up. You look at the metric, that season, they only had a point differential of like +6. Most traditional championship teams in the NBA has a point differential of like 8 or above. And then you start talking about your elite championship squads in history is double digits. And then you start talking about teams like the Bulls, 96 Bulls, and the Warriors in 2017, teams like that. And then this year's Oklahoma City team, you know, and there's some other examples of teams that were dominant that average margin of victory throughout the season was, 10 points or more. So they knew they had to try to get younger. That's why they brought in Montrezl Harrell, who they traded after 1 year. That's why they brought in Dennis Schroeder, who they let go after 1 year, right? They try to get younger, but the problem is that talent couldn't hold up to the real. See, my whole comparison going into each and every year, where you can literally see how the input what you're bringing in don't match the output of what you let go or cash it out. When this whole situation began, all this chaos and mayhem. So you bring in these old players, you bring in DeAndre Jordan, you bring back Avery Bradley. So that made a lot of fans feel confident that this team was going to do something. You brought back 3 players that was part of the bubble team: Howard, Rondo, Bradley. You bring in Melo to come off the bench, right? You bring in DeAndre Jordan. You sign Wayne Ellington from the Pistons, right? And you even bring in Trevor Ariza, who was part of the 09 championship squad, to really try to make people feel good about things. You see what I'm saying? But I'll never forget, it was something that Jeannie Buss said. This is what she said, and quote unquote. Well, and remember, and they traded for Westbrook. That's right, they traded for Russell Westbrook, who was coming off like a 22, 23 point per game triple-double season with the Wizards, led them to the playoffs with their star player injured, Bradley Beal. So you bring in 3 more top 75 players to play with AD and the Hurricane, right? And then you had one of the talking heads say their team was going to win 70 games. and they was gonna win the championship. Oh man, people fans was feeling good, man. But if you uphold the history of the game and you respect that young core who was casted out, see that's been my formula the whole time over these past 7 years. Upholding the history of the game, respecting that young core to the tilt, and applying logic. Those three elements have been the framework of my whole assessment of the situation year after year after year. And by season's end, nothing has been off track, off the mark of what my conclusion was on these off-season moves going into each and every season. When they traded for AD, I said, okay, the year that was leading up to their push to try to win it, after they got AD, I said, okay, they throwing all the chips in the middle of the table. This is the year where it's going to be championship or bust. After the bubble, when I assessed the situation and looked at the other teams out there that was developing their young talent, that was maybe 1 year behind, after that bubble, I said, it's all over. This thing is all over. Okay. So something that Jeannie Buss said, and it blew me away. She said, well, when you have three superstars, she's referring to the Hurricane, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook, take up 90% of your contract, well, you have to rely on older veterans to agree to sign vet minimum deals for one season to give them the opportunity to possibly compete for a championship. And you know why she said possibly? Because she didn't believe in it either. And you know why she didn't believe in it? Because she's seen real championship basketball over from the previous 30 years, from 1980 up until 2010. She saw Showtime roll. She saw Kobe and Shaq roll. She saw Kobe and Powell roll. And she knows real championship basketball when she sees it. Just based on, from a bird's eye view of how her father ran the team, how Jerry West constructed the teams, and how the Pat Rileys of the world and the Phil Jackson of the world coached them teams, she knew what real championship basketball was. She didn't believe in that team, but she couldn't just come out and say it, because you have to use logic. You have to uphold the history of the game, the history of the franchise, and more importantly, you have to understand the importance of letting that young core go. Okay. So going into that season, the first 40 games of that season, I think 27 of those first 40 games, the Lakers were playing at home. And after about the first 35 so games, I think they had a record of 18-17. It was only like a game above 500. And I'm going into that season, I kid you not, in retrospect, I'm not trying to be a revisionist or try to sugarcoat things or exaggerate things. I said, going into that season, I said, there's no way in the world this team is going to do anything. They're not even close to a championship squad. I said, based on watching Memphis grow over the previous 2-3 years, based on Phoenix Suns grow over the past 2-3 years, based on the Denver Nuggets, because that's the team I had always been looking at when we had our real squad out there. The Denvers of the world. And remember, this is when the Clippers, they built up a streak where during the regular season, they beat the Lakers like 11, 12 straight times. So I said, okay, they came, because that team was built to counter a LeBron James system-led team. Because if you go back during that 11-game stretch where the Lakers were losing to the Clippers, his shooting percentage, man, was below what people were accustomed to him shooting. They knew how to block off the driving lanes and force him to shoot the mid-range jumper. That's one of the main reasons why they beat them 11 straight times since he's been in that uniform. And so, based on observing how the league was evolving with young talent, I said, all going into this season, I said, all teams got to do, because the Lakers had so much Hall of Fame level talent, a top 75. Remember, they had five top 75 players on the team, right? That on nights, man, they're going to get out to a fast start just because of all the top heavy talent, kind of front running. I said, all teams got to do is keep the score within 2 possessions by halftime, meaning 4 to 6 points. 2 possessions could be, 6 points because, 2 3-pointers can tie the game up, or 2 2-pointers. I said, come second half in the third quarter, these young squads who have been developing their unit, I said, them young legs are going to take over, man, and they're going to fatigue the Lakers and run them out the gym. And after the midway point of that season, remember, they was only a game above 500 with all them home games at the front of their schedule. The second half of the season, after about the 45 game mark, they did not win consecutive games for the remainder of that campaign. And them young teams wore them out. Sacramento Kings, I think they had beat the Lakers. This before Sacramento went to the playoffs in 2020. I think that was 2023. They went to the playoffs with Mike Brown's first year coaching team when he won a Coach of the Year. They beat the Lakers 10 straight times. And then the Phoenix Suns, after they beat them in the first round, they beat them like 7 to 8 straight times. But they going to tell us that this team is championship level when you got upstart teams beating you during their 10 straight times during regular season over the course of a 2-3 year span. You're not even close to championship level. And I kid you not, that season unfolded to a T. The older players started getting injured. Some of them players got waived. Them older players, this was the oldest team in NBA history. And by season's end, they finished with a record of 33-49. It's the greatest, it's even a worse extreme than the Hurricanes' first year being brought to the Lakers when it comes to what was predicted of them and the outcome. In year one, they predict he was going to lead the young core to the Western Conference Finals, and they didn't even make the playoffs. They didn't finish with a winning record. They didn't finish with a 500 record. They finished 8 games below. This was even worse because they was picked to win it all, face Brooklyn in the finals. Neither team, Brooklyn made the playoffs, but they got swept in the first round because they got rid of 4 of 8 key young players to get James Harden. Whereas if they had kept that young mix to play with KD and Kyrie, they probably would have made the finals. I believe they would have. But once you got rid of them, brought in a third superstar, now you have to bring in older guys. You see what I'm saying? To fill out the rest of the roster. It's a recipe to lose. Because your teams like your Boston Celtics, they built their core with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And then Marcus Smart at the time. You know what I'm saying? And in the Western Conference, you had 3 or 4 teams that took over the top of the conference. This before Minnesota hit. Now you got Houston out there, number 2 seed. Okay. So They finished with a record of 33-49. The head coach got fired. He had to take the hit for that. Even though he wasn't the cause of this problem. He was scapegoated. But it gets me to another point. And it shows that we have been better off just with our real squad and building. They finished 2 games lower as far as win totals than the young core-driven Lakers, who had improved their victory total by 20 games over a span of 2 years in the Western Conference with no other veteran on the team. The 22 Lakers finished with a point differential of darn near -4. It was somewhere like -4 point differential. This is a team that was predicted to win it all. The young core-driven team had a point differential of -1.5, and they had a better defensive rating than the 22 Lakers, and it was a better rebounding team than the 22 Lakers, and it was a faster paced team than the 22 Lakers, and they had a better scoring second unit than the 22 Lakers. Because as much of a talent and great player Carmelo Anthony was, especially in his prime, particularly with the Denver Nuggets, his role as sixth man, he averaged around 13 points a game. Well, Jordan Clarkson, who won Sixth Man of the Year in 2021, will turn out to be his last year with the Lakers. He was averaging darn near 16 points a game. So the young core second unit outplayed this veteran-laden, star-laden second unit of the Lakers by a mile. So this lets me know that the projection of the young core team, you would have got better results, more consistent results year after year after year, because you would have had a team that was truly developed, that played according to your system, that wasn't built to win now, but was built for the future, that encompasses all of that. That's what that season let me know in 2022. And that's when the Laker brass got the epiphany how important young talent was. But that malaise carried over to the next year when they started the season off 0-5 and 2-10, when they had a real schedule starting up front. And then you had all this panic, like, what's going on? They was about to miss the playoffs for the second straight year. And then they made that trade of Russell Westbrook to bring in an influx of young players. And that's what stabilized the franchise. They was about to miss the playoffs for 2 straight years, even with the play-in. But the problem is, even those young players they brought in, the Vanderbilts, the Hachimuras, the Beasleys, they brought back D'Lo. I won't really count him in the situation. In Mo Bambas, they're not better than the original real young core. So my thing is, the franchise operating in reverse, even when it looked like that it's in a good situation. Whereas if you had your real squad, you know exactly where you is on a year-to-year basis, and you make key moves to fill whatever void that's there by season end to improve incrementally, to get you, take you over the top, put you in position to truly vie for a title, rather than continuously, believing in a situation where you wind up rolling the dice every year and then mortgaging more your own off and draft picks to compete in this league. Because if they couldn't have made that trade for Russell Westbrook, and see, that's why they want to scapegoat Westbrook and pin it all on him. But if it wasn't for that contract, the $47 million contract, to flip around and bring in a whole bunch of young players, where would the Lakers be at right now? But ironically, the trades are not even really producing the results, because the players that you're bringing in, half of them are already gone. Beasley was gone by season's end. D'Lo was gone within 2 seasons. Vanderbilt, they want to trade him now. Mo Bamba played one half of basketball, and he was gone. So the only true player that's remaining in that trade cycle is Hachimura, who's playing out of position. So I wanted to break that down And it just lets me know unequivocally that we should have stayed with our real squad. Because there's nowhere in the world you win now and you only wind up claiming 33 wins in the NBA season when you got 5 top 75 players on your team. And what it really shows is basketball is not about stacking talent. Yes, you need a superstar, but it's about building a team. That's what it's about. That's what Oklahoma City did. They built a team, dog. And that's why they're champions. And that's why the Lakers keep missing the mark with the Hurricane on the team. If they keep on trying to make these moves, they're going to get the same results. Now, was make it, Rob Pelinka's trying to improve the situation because now they are trying to bring in younger players. But the problem is you got 4 or 5 teams in the West that have already went through that phase. And those teams they're more solidified. They got better chemistry and they're competing. You see what I'm saying? They're not relying on mid-season overhauls to keep up. That's the difference. That's why Minnesota beat them in the first round. That's why Denver beat them in the first round. That's why Phoenix beat them in the first round. So I just want to drop that real quick, man. Like I say, man, I keep coming up with these gold nuggets, man, because the key to it is upholding that young core, man. If I want to uphold that young core, I'd be oblivious to what's going on, dog. I'd be confused myself. But that's the whole root of the problem. So I just want to drop that nugget. Please leave your comments and thoughts. This is as real as it gets, people. They should have stuck with the original blueprint. There's no doubt in my mind. But as I love to say, this your boy JB. And until next time, this is BTB, Behind the Bench.